Hey there, hello there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to another Stone Cold Hockey 1970-71 season we're doing the Montreal Canadiens to see how many times they'll allow Ken Dryden to play in the net in the early part of the season. We're 3-1. We're doing pretty well. Boston is undefeated 4-0. Toronto has not lost a game yet. They're 2-0-2. The Rangers have not lost a game yet, but they've only played three, one win and two ties. Minnesota is the only team in the West that has not lost a game. 3-1 with 7 points. Phyllis Basile and Gilles Perreault putting up 6 goals. Amazing Perreault, his first season with a first-year expansion team, and he's got 6 goals. For us, our best guy is Pete Mahovlich, who's 9 for 3. Assist-wise, Bobby Orr's got 8. JC Tremblay has second in the NHL assists. Nice. Points-wise, Phyllis Basile and Bobby Orr are 1-2. Tremblay's third. Nice. Penalty minutes, Sean Ferguson's third behind only Keith Benson and Barclay Plager. Pete Mahovlich has 18 penalty minutes. Pete Mahovlich, is that 30? Goaltending, Shields for Moon has the best goals against. Cesar Menangle second, Eddie Johnston third. Phil Meyer 2-0 with a 2. Goals against average, he's sixth. Rookie Vachon 1-1 with a 4.29. Standings wise, the Rangers have only played 3 games, so have the Kings. The Canucks and Red Wings have played the most with 6. The Red Wings have yet to win in 6 games. California, Pittsburgh, LA, and St. Louis have yet to win. California leads, takes fourth place for 3 points. Vancouver's fourth. That's amazing. Rangers and Detroit are not looking good, but they haven't played too many games. We've scored 16 goals, allowed 11. We're perfect at home 2-0. On the road, we're 1-1. Teams wise, let's look at us. Rookie Vachon 1-1. Meyer 2-0. Dryden played the last few minutes of a game that saw Rookie Vachon be taken out. JC Tremblay with 8 points. Pete Mahovlich with 6. Highlights wise, Bill Goldsworthy with 4 goals and a hat trick. Keith McCrory with a hat trick for Pittsburgh. The most memorable game right now, Boston LA 5-4 in a tight goal fest that Boston beat LA in. Minnesota Detroit, when Detroit was up 2-0 on Minnesota, but lost three straight goals by O'Brien and O'Shea. That 11-0 Boston game was number 6. Our most memorable game was our 4-3 win over Chicago on 17 with Desjardins. Got us by head to them. But we are going to play in New York against the Rangers. And they want Phil Meyer back in the net against Ed Jacquemin. It was a 2-man rotation for the Rangers and goalie, Jacquemin and Fermoon. The Rangers had Davey Bellon, former Hab, Raj Gilbert, Jean Rotel. Jean Rotel. Raj Gilbert, the guy who had spinal fusion problems because of an ice cream container in Guelph. Well, Kachuk, say it with me, Kitchener. Yeah, the Catfield, great left winger, who was hated in Leafland for throwing Brady Perron's mask into the stands in the playoff game. Bob Nevin, Ted Irvin break the walls because he's the father of Chris Jericho. Pete Stamkowski, former Leaf. Jim Nielsen, great defenseman. Brad Park, yeah, he was a pretty good defenseman for the Rangers back then. Bill Fairburn, Jack Eagers, also Kitchener. Rod Sealing, Kitchener. Ron Stewart, not Kitchener, but former Blue, who would get traded to the Rangers for Berenson. Ernie Brown, Tim Horton, known for his bear claws and bear hugs. Andre Moose DuPont, I didn't know he was a Ranger. Sil Apps, and now it's not the Sil Apps from the 1930s and 40s that was a legend in Leafland. That's Sil Apps Jr. Larry Brown, not the NBA head coaching icon. Mike Robitaille, Jim Krolicki, and Ab DeMarco. Montreal, we have Yvonne Cornway, Pete Mahovlich, Jacques Lemaire, Jean-Michel Beliveau, Roadrunner, Yvonne Cornway, Mark Tartif, who would be better known in the WHA, the policeman John Ferguson, Point 2, Guy Lapointe, Mickey Redmond, traded to Detroit later on, and he was basically he's a Detroit color commentating icon. Bill Roberto, who assisted on Belleville's 500 goal. I think they traded him to the Red Wings, I think. Henri Pocket Rocket Richard. JC Tremblay, also known for his WHA heroics. Claude LaRose. Rajon, I would say Castle, but that's not him. It's Peanut. Cool. Bobby Sheehan, Bill Collins, Serge Savard, a young Serge Savard, Leon Rochefort, Guy Charon, Terry Harper, Larry Plow, Ralph Backstrom, who was later traded from Montreal to Los Angeles so that they can freaking help LA not get last place and they get Oakland's pick, which was Guy Lafleur, Fran Huck, Jacques Lepierre, and Pierre Bouchard. Oh yeah, Fashion, Meyer, and Dryden. 3 minutes into the game, Teams deliver hit. Another 3 minutes pass by. Rangers a chance. Nevin stopped by Meyer. Much later. Suddenly, it's terrible Ted Irvin. Do we have a chance? Henri Richard? Fuck. 2 minutes later. Enforcer? Hit. 2 minutes later. Rangers a chance. Well, Kachuk. No. Montreal stops him. Keep going. No shot by Kachuk. No score. 3-1. 1 minute later. Primo Hovlich, no. 5 minutes later. Battle in a fight. It's Tartif and Gilbert. Weird. I thought Ferguson and someone else would have gone. But Mark Tardif and Rod Gilbert fighting? Well, those two are decent offensive players. Well, Tardif more for the WHA and Rod Gilbert in the now and then. Bob Nevin had a chance. Much later. Follow the ball. Bouncing ball. Fell off. His first from Kankowski Park. 1-0 Rangers. Much later. Jim Nielsen, no. Last moments. We did it here on the cow, and we're down 1-0. Rangers trying to stay undefeated. Much later. Agitators? Well, we deliver hit and agitate the Rangers. It's Bear for 2. How to play Cornway. Stop it, Jackman. And we get penalized. Claude Rose had a chance, but Lepierre just had to get penalized. Deliver hit on Gilbert and kill the zone. 4 minutes later. We deliver a hit. 5 minutes later. Chance for the Rangers, Hatfield. Now we Arnie Brown slides it in the empty net from Kachuk and Corbin. Arnie. Sif. If you're a Simpsons fan, you know damn well what that chance is. Prima Hovlich had a chance. And that's Clark Force make a 3-0 from Arnie Brown. Wow, we just can't catch a break. After the shutout, and we just sucked. We gave up 2 empty net goals. Allen, Brown, and Park, first goals of the year for them. But, you know, the rule is, just like the St. Louis thing, if we lose or tie, we have to simulate the next game until we win. Cali and Vancouver. Cali will lose again. Vancouver 7-3. Doug Wilson does the job. California goes by O'Donohue, Amon, and Hampson. Vancouver goes by Pat Quinn. Yes, that Pat Quinn. Hall. Kernan back with a natural hat trick in the second period. Corrigan, and then Corrigan again. Kernan back looking good. We are hosting Minnesota, but of course, you know, we lost the last game, so we have to simulate. St. Louis, California, battle then defeat, winless, tie 3. Wakely and Smith tie 3-3. California was up 3-2. Featherstone, Croteau, and O'Donohue. St. Louis goes by St. Marcel, Jim Lawrence, Kitchener, and Sabarin. Pitt, LA, another battle winless, and LA breaks their drought 8-2. Norris, Jack Norris. Lots of teams had him, and beating Al Smith. Pittsburgh goes by Sean Proterville and Harborough, but LA goes by Bob Berry, Cowboy Flett, Dale Hoganson, Larry Mickey, winning Bob Berry again, Gord LeBourgeois, and Bob Pulfer for relief and Blackhawk. Montreal, Minnesota, we tie. Manico and Meyer. Tardif scored for Montreal, but Danny Grant scored for Minnesota. No chance. Minnesota still. It's a tie. That means we have to go continue. And the Rangers and Leafs, 3-3 tie. Plot and Jackman. The Leafs were down 3-1, but Ellis and Paul Henderson scoring goals to prevent the Rangers from keeping their undefeated. Well, they're both undefeated. Chicago, Boston. Boston will win 6-2 quite comfortably. Cheevers beats Desjardins. Chicago goes by Pitt Martin and Chico Mackey. Boston goes by Ken Hodge Sr., Dallas Smith, Johnny Busick, Fred Stanfield, Bobby Orr, and Pye McKenzie. Buffalo, Philly tie 3-3. Friday against Detroit, trying for their first win. They can't get it. Buffalo wins 5-1. Joe Daly beats Hank Edwards. Detroit goal by Alex DeVecchio, breaking the shutout for Daly. But Anderson, Atkinson, Andrea, Goya, and Schmaltz. Chuck Schmaltz. Pittsburgh, California, battle of the winless. California wins the game. Smith beats Smith. Pittsburgh, 2 goals by Haberach and McCurry. But Cali goes by Dennis Hextall, Ted Hempson, Roberts, Jarrett, and Jarrett. So Pittsburgh still winless. St. Louis, are they still winless? No, they're not. They win 4-3. Crisp, Ecclestone, Cameron, and Bordelot scoring for St. Louis. Taylor, Corrigan, and Hatou. Saturday, St. Louis, LA sees LA crush St. Louis 5-2. Man, the Blues have been pathetic since I left. Rangers, Minnesota in the battle of the undefeated, and Minnesota stays undefeated. Gilles Gilbert, yes, he was a Minnesota North Star before Upward, beats Jackman. Near goal by Vic Hatfield, but Minnesota goes by Dennis O'Shea twice and Bill Goldsworthy from Waterloo. Montreal, of course, since we tied, we have to simulate against Philly, and we win 4-1. Parent losing to Fashion. Philly goal by Dornhofer, but we scored Redmond, Pocket Rocket, LaRose, and Lamar. Chicago, Toronto. Will Toronto stay undefeated? They kind of do. 2-2 tie. Pont beat Desjardins. Chicago goes by Chico Mackey and Bobby Hall. Hall's only got 2. Mackey's got 4. Pelican, Billy McMillan for Toronto. Sunday, we are in Detroit, so we'll have to do the game in Detroit. Boston trying to stay undefeated. They do, 4-1. But now losing to Cheevers. Philly go by Gendron, Wayne Carlton, Ed Westfall, Fred Stanfield, and Carlton scoring for Booston. Chicago Buffalo saw Buffalo crush Chicago in the Pine Powder 6-2. Wow. Cali Rangers crushed California 6-1. Jackman beat Smith. Hick, they'll go for California Rangers goals. Walkachuk, Kitchener, Will Russia Bear, Jim Nielsen, Dave Bellin, Arnie Brown. Pitt, Vancouver, Pitt stays under. Will winless? Nope, 6-4. Newton, who the frig is Newton? Fake Newton? Vancouver goes by Johnson, Boudrias, Kurtenbach's got double digits. Pittsburgh goes by Sane, Rupp, Glenn Saver, yes, that Glenn Saver, Greg Polis, McCallum, and then Polis in the empty net. So we have to go to Detroit because we won the last game. And they want Phil Meyer in the net against Jim Rutherford, who would be a good GM. Roy Edwards was a goalie too. Don McLeod, future WHA legend for Houston, and Jerry Gray. So anyway, Montreal, Detroit, Tom Webster, who will later become a coach and get kicked out for 15 games for throwing a stick like a javelin, hitting. Was it Kerry Fraser? I don't remember. Gordie Howe, Mr. Hockey, still around. Alex Delvecchio still around, part of production line. Nick Libet, Frank Mahovlich, soon to be a Montreal Canadien. Here's wait and see. Gary Unger, surprised he was not with the Blues at this time. Gary Bergman, great defenseman. Wayne Connolly, Rene Leclerc, Guy Charron would be traded from Montreal to Detroit. That was stupid because not only did Detroit not make the playoffs that year, but Montreal won the Stanley Cup. So Guy Charron, he had over 600 NHL games without making the playoffs. I think that's still the record, or I don't know. I wonder if he does still hold the record, or it's been broken. Yeah, he played in NHL from 69 to 81. He never played a single playoff game, 734 games before Ole Jokinen broke it. But Ole Jokinen had played in the playoffs. But, yeah, he's played 734 games in the NHL, but he never sniffed the playoffs once. Yeah, Jokinen, I know he was in the playoffs, but I guess they don't count that. Regardless of that, Bruce McGregor, no Mickey Redmond, not yet. Montreal has Redmond. No Bill Collins. Red Berenson went to the Red Wings in that move. Huh, okay. No Bill Collins yet. Yeah, the Montreal traded Bill Collins to Detroit, I guess. Tim Ecclestone. The Blues would make a trade with Detroit. I don't know who the Red Wings traded back, but Ecclestone. Mike Robitaille not around. Arnie Brown was not around. The Rangers traded him? Hank Monteith was there. Don Luce. Kitchener. Dale Rolfe. Future Ranger defenseman. Ron Harris. One of the two guys who inadvertently killed Bill Masterton in 1968. Jerry Hart, future Islander. Tom Miller, and Al Carlander. Nevertheless, first minute of the game, Connolly cannot do anything. Looking for the Red Wings is Gary Unger. Can we change the color or something? We can't change the color. I wish I could change the color of that thing because it's actually hard to see. 2 for 2. Will the Red Wings come back? Bergman, Beckman killed. 5 minutes later, aggression. And it is Pete Mahovlich. Red Wings, Rene Clark trying to score. We're lucky so far. 5 minutes later, Montreal, Abu! Pocket Rocket Richard, his third from Ferguson and Lamar. 1-0 Montreal. First intermission up 1-0. Detroit trying to break their 7-game winless streak. Early on. We have a chance to try Ferguson. Stopped by Rutherford. 4 minutes later. We have a chance to Lemaire. Trap play. The man behind the trap. His 4th goal from point 2. Makes it 2-0. 3 minutes later, battle, aggression. Mohavlich for 2. And it hurts Detroit's attack. But they score! Power play. Ingrid Bergman, the second from Mr. Hot. 4 minutes later. Liberation Day, Libet from McGregor Webster, 2. 2 minutes later, we have a chance to skills. Booby Sheehan. His first from JC Tremblay. Man, he's picking up all those assists. Montreal let him walk to the WHA and a minor on Pocket Rocket, of course. No shot by Carly, and Montreal has a 3-2 lead after 2. And Billy Day cannot score. 3 minutes later. Mr. From Renee Leclerc. I talked about Renee Leclerc, did I not? I guess not. 1 minute later. Just for a skier. Gentleman, Jean Beliveau from Pocket Rocket. And yes, it was Beliveau who retired after the 71 season, not Pocket Rocket. He stayed for 4 more years. 4 more years. 4 more years. Rangers jet skier. Jean Beliveau proving that he's not done yet, baby. It's 5-3. Detroit says we might as well keep Rutherford in the net. Libet tried to score. And no, 4 minutes later. Aggression. Well, our defense has been reduced, but Frank Mahovlich will go to retake the shot. Lemaire, no. Turdiv, no. Empty nets are coming up soon. Could be. Not happening. We put Detroit to the sword and make sure their winless streak goes to 8. A 5-3 win. Phil Meyer does his job against Rutherford. Montreal goes Pocket Rocket, Lemaire, Sheehan, and then Belleville with 2 in the third period. Bergman, Libet, and Howe for Detroit. You had 2 legends, Howe and Belleville scoring all the goals in the third period. So we win, so we keep going, in a sense. Monday, no game. Tuesday, Buffalo, Vancouver, the battle, the expansion bowl, and Vancouver wins 2-1. So we play in Toronto. Chicago, Minnesota. Minnesota, their undefeated streak snaps. Tony Esposito beats Manico. Danny Grant scored to prevent the shutout, but Bobby Hall his third, Dennis Hall his third, Pitt Martin his third, Stan Mikita his second, Pat Stapleton his second. So Chicago's not really getting the goal scores. Detroit trying to win their first game. Not happening. 4-2. Edwards loses to Vermeulen. Unger and Monteith did score for Detroit, but Bell and Rattel, Hadfield and Rattel scoring for the Rangers. Cali Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh wins 4-3. Cali St. Louis. St. Louis wins 5-4. And now we have to head to Toronto. And it will be Rogie versus Plante. The former Montreal iconic goalie, Jacques Plante. There's my hometown team, Toronto. Jacques Plante, Bernie Perrant, Bruce Gamble, and Murray McLaughlin are in the net. Yeah, Murray McLaughlin. I don't know why Bernie Perrant's active. Perrant can't be active because of the fact that, he's a flyer. I guess. No, if he was inactive, then we'd just go with, Murray McLaughlin. Bruce Campbell. But Bruce Campbell went to Philly. So Philly can't really use Campbell. I don't know how they could do it. Yeah, Toronto has won twice but tied 4 times, so they have a 6-game undefeated streak. We'll see about that. Davey Keon, gentlemen. Dave Keon's still around in the NHL. Norm Ullman, a byproduct of that trade that sent Frank Mahovlich to Detroit in 1968. Thanks a lot, Punch and Black. Paul Henderson, yeah, he was a Leaf and Summer Series 72 hero. Ron Ellis, number 6 in your programs. Billy McMillan, before he went to the Atlanta Flames. Guy Trottier. Gary Monahan. I believe he was the first pick in the 1962 draft ever, in the draft system ever. Jim Harrison, who later got into better things in WHA. Daryl Sittler, my man, not a Kitchener Ranger, but a London Knight. Yeah, he's still an icon. He was a young man. Brian Spinner Spencer in left wing. Man, what a troubled life Spencer lived because of his overbearing father. Because Brian Spencer was going to be interviewed on Hockey Night in Canada for the Leaf game, but unfortunately, because they lived in British Columbia, the BC guys got the Vancouver game, and then Spencer's dad went into the local CBC affiliate and demanded they show the Toronto game in the interview, but was shot in a shootout. Jim Dory, penalty minutes guy. George Armstrong, the Chief, winding down his career. Mike Pellick, Jim McKinney, Rick Lay, who would do better in the WHA, and I think his number was retired by the Whalers. Mike Shaker Walton, Brad Selwood, Bob Bond was still around. Surprise. Danny Dupere, Brian Glennie, Bob Linnington, Bert Selby coming back to Toronto from Philly. Amazing. Anyway, 5 minutes into the game. Anderson scores for Canada. For Toronto. He scored for Ron Ellis. Montreal meet for a hit. Gresham. It's going to be Bob Bond for 2. Can we take advantage? We sure can. Skill. Pop-up power play go. Point 2. Guy Laplante, his second from Tardif. Makes it 1-1. 3 minutes later, a battle in aggression. And a 5-minute major on Pete Mahovlich. Damn it, Pete Mahovlich? McMillan gets hit. Somehow somebody kill it off, and Toronto can only score once on us. Paul Henderson scoring 0.2 for T Dot, so it's 1-1. 3 minutes into the period. This goal from Selwood and Keon makes it 2-1 Toronto. 4 minutes later. Badger, not as smart as the first place. Norm Ullman, his second, makes it 3-1. Trying to do the Norm show. Leaves another chance. Keon, stopped by Rogie. 5 minutes later. Give a chance. 0.2, stopped by Jacques Plante. We'll get to the box in front, and it looks like Toronto will have their undefeated streak go to 7. Well, that's it. Power play goal. Billy McMillan. Billy don't be a hero. Fifth from David Keon. It's 4-1. Just keeping the clock. Ferguson had a chance and failed. Just to get a hit. 4 minutes later. Montreal Skiers. The policeman, Johnny Ferguson, scoring in Toronto where his bastard son ruined the Leafs. Jean Beliveau and J.C. Tremblay scoring for the East. 4 minutes. Oh, Toronto's got penalized. Jim Dory. Can we take advantage? No. Folk. And I think that's it. Practically. We can't do anything, and Toronto will now have a 7-game undefeated streak. 4-2 is your final. We almost put Dryden in the nets, but I was like, well, might as well keep Mr. Fashion on. Henderson, Harrison, Ullman, and McMillan for T-Dot, LaPointe, and Ferguson for us. On a beautiful Wednesday, we have to lose. Thursday, Boston undefeated. Detroit winless. I should have known. Detroit wins 6-3. Gray in the net. Boston made 3-3. Or Busick and Espo. Detroit had Tom Webster, Gordie Howe, and Bruce McGregor. But then Detroit put up 3 goals. Frank Mahovlich, Gary Younger, and Gary Bergman. So I kind of had a hunch that a winless team like Detroit was going to beat an undefeated team, that means Boston. LA beats Philly, and by the way, Buffalo wins 7-5. Rangers, Boston. I think is Toronto the only undefeated team left? They are. Toronto's the only undefeated team left. Rangers, Boston sees the Boston Bruins win 4-1 on Cheevers beating Jackman. Boston goals by Busick, Westfall, Hodge, and Reggie Leach. Oh yeah, that's right. Reggie Leach was a Boston Bruin at one time. I forgot. Rangers had Ron Stewart score, former Blue. And because we lost, we have to simulate the game against Vancouver. It was a 2-2 tie. Wilson and Meyer tied. Montreal. Collins and Tardif scored, but Vancouver, Rosie Palma and Hall tied it. Chicago, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh wins 5-2. St. Louis crushes LA, and Toronto beats Minnesota shutout by Plante. Keon and Guy Trottier with the goals. And Minnesota Boston. Boston wins 5-2. Toronto beats Detroit. Well, Detroit broke Boston's undefeated streak, but they couldn't beat Toronto. Plante with another shutout. Rutherford the loss. Ellis, McMillan, Dory, Sittler, my man, and Davey Keon scoring the goals for the Leafs. They're still undefeated. LA crushes Boston, Buffalo. Chicago takes down the Rangers, and Pittsburgh beats Philly. Monday nothing, Tuesday nothing, Wednesday. Detroit, Chicago. Detroit gets their butts handed to them 3-0 by Chicago. Cali beats Rangers. Wow. Toronto still with that winning streak, undefeated streak. They tie Plante and Descharty. So Toronto's now got a 10-game undefeated streak. Paul Henderson, Dave Keon, Jim Harrison, and Guy Trottier for Toronto. LA goes by Cowboy Flett, Russ Lonsberry, Ravlich, and Larry Mickey. Now remember, we tied the last game, so we have to simulate. And we beat Minnesota 5-3. Vachon beats Manigo. Montreal goes by Rochefort, Redmond, Tardif, LaPlante, and Ferguson in the empty net. Minnesota go by Goldsworthy, Burns, and Danny Grant. Vancouver, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh wins that game. St. Louis, Boston. Boston ties St. Louis. Are they the last team to not have a tie? Buffalo beats Vancouver in the Expansion Bowl, and Detroit had a worse record than Philly, but 4-1. Favel loses to Rutherford. Lezick for Philly. Detroit goes by Tom Webster, Nick Levitt, Gary Younger, and Tom Webster again. Toronto 10-game unbeaten streak will continue 6-3. Gamble beats Smith. California goes by Featherstone, Amen, and Featherstone, but Toronto goes by Jerry Monahan, Brian Spear, Spencer, Keon, Mike Walton, Spencer again, and then George Armstrong. So the next game you'll see is against Buffalo. The Buffalo Gals. Rangers LA tied at 4. St. Louis, Minnesota. Minnesota wins 4-1. Philly will lose again, 3-1. Man, they're struggling. Boston will beat Pittsburgh. Toronto's second trip to Vancouver will be a loss. Their undefeated streak ends at 11. Gamble loses to Hodge. Toronto goes by Pellick, Walton, and Ron Ellis, but not enough. Vancouver, Rosie Paymont, Barry Wilkins, Rosie Paymont, Kernbach, and Wayne Mackey. So the next game you'll see is Buffalo, Montreal, because we won. So that's that. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond.